MNCAA back with you with our segment with NCHC Hockey. It's Nick Maxson with you. With always, Max Veech. Max, welcome back here, my friend. We finally have some hockey to talk about. Some good, some bad, potentially some ugly, a little bit of everything. But I think the better note is hockey is finally back, and we got some things to talk about. So welcome back, my friend. Good to see you.
Yeah, it's great to be back. It's week one, so there's you're gonna take the good with the bad, and I'm excited to watch all of it. And, there's gonna be some ugly plays, freshmen with some nerves. There's gonna be some tight goaltenders who haven't had the in-game speed and shots and everything else that they might be used to in the middle of the season. Obviously, playoff hockey is a little bit different as well, but just seeing all the guys back out there and getting to see some of the new faces and how they're producing is really fun this time of year, and I look forward to it, and I look forward to hearing everybody else's opinions as well, because mine might be loud, but I like to hear what other smarter people have to say as well.
I'm not sure if I'm smarter, but to your point though, we got a taste of, and mind you, just a taste, right, of what these
Right.
teams could be capable of. Both of our squads had an exhibition game mixed in with our first non-conference schedule. And
Yes.
both of our teams, again, a little bit of everything. I want to start with you, Max, with UMD, because they played Bemidji State to open this season. This was a game that counted, followed by an
Correct.
exhibition at home. 3-4 overtime loss, meaning the Bulldogs falling. But I suppose the big thing to take away from this, Max, was, we talked about the freshman class coming in, and essentially they carried the mail in this game. That could be looked at a couple different ways, right? Which is, yes, kind of showing that this is a very talented class, but also
Right.
like, the freshmen should not be in the first ever collegiate game, should be carrying the mail, right?
Right. Yeah. It was very exciting to watch. Obviously, you've got Plant, and Shagabe all on one line, which is not necessarily out of the realm of possibilities of things that Sandelin's done in the past, but it's certainly not the norm to have an entirely freshman class, especially that high up on the line charts there. And they proved that they earned that spot and they should be playing there. Shagabe, known more as a pass first type of player, is the one that pots 2 goals for UMD, and the first of the season for UMD as well. It's great to see. He's always finding himself in the right place. It's been that way since he was at Warroad and in Green Bay as well, similar situations. But just a smart player who knows where he needs to be, and is has been rewarded for it very early. So love seeing that. I've been very excited to watch him play, and I'm glad that he's got at least 2 under his belt to get things going there. And then Zam Plant, who was expected to be the starter on that line, comes out and gets a goal and an assist. That whole line, multi-point game, but Zam Plant goal and an assist, and his brother Max 2 assists on the night as well. They were flying out there. I will be the first to admit they made some mistakes early. I think they were the ones on the ice when they gave up that goal less than 2 minutes into the game there. But they came back. They played hard, and I would be hard pressed to say, as would anybody, to think of their performance as anything other than a positive step forward for UMD, and encouraging for the future for sure.
And that's sort of what you take away, right? Yes,
Yeah.
yeah, it's a loss. We get it. But just like St. Cloud's exhibition against the Gophers, the scoreboard not as good as yours, 5-1 the loss, even with St. Cloud scoring first. But
Right.
there were positives, right? And again, there's always going to be rust. The first couple of games, that's to be expected. And again, when you have, a lot of freshmen that are going into essentially key roles here, Max,
Yeah.
you're going to have those mistakes. And Scott Sandelin in the past has taken the position, much as Brett Larson, which is, I don't really have a choice. These guys need to be in there, and you sort of have to play your way through these mistakes. Do you get the sense that that's how, at least through 2 games and projecting forward, that's how Sandelin is going to treat this very young squad, which is they're going to have to probably play through their mistakes and learn to recover quickly?
Absolutely. Yeah. I will be, the first one to admit that there's going to be probably a little bit tighter leash on some of the guys than others. But when you've got 11 freshmen on the team, you're going to run into a situation where you're going to have probably 2, if not more of them on the ice at the same time. And they're just going to have to learn to grow and trust one another, picking up on different teammates' habits, where they're going to be, how they attack the ice or the puck, or play the opposite, more defensive style. It's going to take a little bit of time to gel. They've only been with each other for, in some cases anyway, for like 6 weeks or so. So those teammates are going to take a little bit longer, but like you see the Zam and Max Plant connection, they've been playing together their entire life, summers, even when they're not playing organized hockey. So that they've got that immediate connection as well, kind of built in. So a little bit of time under the belt, and I think that you're going to see some of these mistakes that are going to show up in early games kind of fade away a little bit more, whereas in the past we might have seen them linger a little bit longer. Just the hockey IQ that UMD and I think St. Cloud honestly has as well is certainly one that you would expect to take over as the season progresses here. But yeah, I think you nailed it in terms of what Sandelin's going to be expecting out of the freshman class, and they're well aware of it as well.
Yeah, and I kind of want to stick with UMD for a moment here, Max, because
Sure.
the following night you went home, a 7-2 exhibition win over the University of Manitoba. Some feel good vibes, right?
Right.
But this brings me into some breaking sort of legislation that might be coming down. And mind you, we've talked about this very briefly, but it sounds like this is a go. It sounds like the NCAA will be amending their bylaws. Now, mind you, apparently other sports, in terms of the amateur status thing, this has already been done, right? It's been hockey that's been sort of the big one left out, where CHL players will be, supposedly the expectation is to be allowed to play in the NCAAs as early as next season.
Yep.
And this is where this could get very interesting next year. Max, I just want to get your initial reaction to this news coming out. It was Brad Schlossman, of course, who does a wonderful job that sort of broke the news here. I guess, what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, Brad, Mike McMahon, and everybody else that's got all these news stories coming out. I've been following them. I think everybody that's enjoying college hockey has been following them and this story very, very closely as it's kind of progressed there. But that's going to be interesting. I know that they're calling it a vote in November, but all points are leading to this going through and becoming a real the real world that we're living in as far as hockey is concerned in the U.S. But with that being said, it sounds like players won't be eligible until August, which is strange to me because I don't know what that communication. It's not a legal tampering period. If they're allowed to talk to those players before August and they just can't commit until August, or if they're not allowed to reach out at all until August. Because if it's gray to me right now, it might be gray to some other people. And I need to brush up on how that actually shakes out, because if we've got coaches that are going to have to, and they are, let me rephrase that, we have coaches and staffs who are going to have to change the way that they recruit and, maybe try and be a little bit more aggressive with some of their Canadian counterparts as well, especially ones that have a pretty good connection to those Canadian players and schools. UMD's had a few over the years that have panned out pretty well. You're going to need to maybe start making room on your teams and adjust for the future. And those that have a large freshman class like UMD, or the exact opposite, you're going to need to bring in a ton. You're going to be approaching it a few different ways. So it's going to be very interesting to see how each of these coaches does it. And maybe some are going to say, no, we don't really want to change the way that we've been doing things because we've had success, and we'll let other people kind of toil in that and see how it pans out. Just because players have a little bit more flexibility when they would want to make that jump, a little bit less incentive to do so. So I think it's going to be a much bigger thing for some of the Atlantic hockey schools that have traditionally taken players from places north of the border when they're lacking interest from others in the States here as well. But I would say you're probably going to see it on 50-60% of teams, at least one player in the next 2 years. So it'll be a slow move for a good chunk of players, but I think in the first year you're already going to see some commits making that jump from the CHL leagues down to the collegiate game down here. But I'm happy to hear your thoughts on that as well.
Well, mind you, this all started, right? A bit of background on this. There was a player that I believe is currently on the WHL roster that verbally committed to Arizona State,
Arizona
right?
State. Yep.
And I believe it's a pending lawsuit, right? There's pending litigation that is addressing this. And, going back to, this legislation, they called this an emergency legislation to get people together to get a vote on this in November. So
Yeah.
if you're kind of taking a step back, right, Max, it almost seems like it's sort of like trying to get the cart before the horse a little bit, where it's, trying to beat the legal process and maybe trying to avoid some more costly legislation, which the NCAA, as of recently, has not had the best track record of. So that's
Right.
how I see it. But in terms of the overall impact on the game, right, Max, I think it's going to impact the game a couple different ways. One, as you mentioned, I think the smaller schools are going to start to really reach out and utilize maybe some of those connections in the CHL, and just it's another way. For example, St. Cloud has recruited overseas, right? To let's say
Right.
Finland, just to name one country as of note. It's going to be interesting to see. We'll put it that way. I do wonder how it's going to impact the transfer portal in terms of the player's decision to enter the transfer portal, just because now you have the potential of so many different players that could now go into the program. Do you want, even though maybe you're not happy with your current role, do you risk going into the portal not being picked up, or again, grass is greener on the other side argument? I don't know. I think this is going to shake up quite a bit of things. And I do think that your idea that I'm not sure how immediate some of these are going to be, but I think it's going to be interesting over the course of 2 to 3 years how things sort of adjust. It's definitely going to impact the game in some respects.
Right.
It's just going to be hard to know exactly how it's going to be approached from both sides, right? From both the players as well as the coaches, the recruiting side of things. But I guess we'll wait and see, right? I think the one thing we do know, Max, is that the NCHC, now 9 teams and will soon be 10 teams, that I think is positioned really, really well to sort of, handle this change. So I think that's good. What's also good is after my St. Cloud State Huskies fell to the Gophers, and granted the scoreboard, I don't put too much stock into that. I think they played okay. Certainly there were things that they need to clean up. But came back and won a nail biter against a very good St. Thomas squad, 1-0 in Sota Heights. Wasn't in attendance, but caught the box score. And, Max, if there's one thing the NCHC does, and I think does so well, is when you have such good competition, not only in your own conference, but also non-conference, right? I mean, St. Thomas 3 years ago was pretty much looked at, okay, welcome to Division One. This is going to be a rude awakening for you. And I think St. Cloud, was that 12-2 or something like that. And now it's like, they're coming in preseason ranked in the top 20. Their expectation is that they're the favorite to win the CCHA again this year. Rico Blasi has done an excellent job with that program. But to kind of put it all, into one thing is it really sets up these teams well, right? When you're playing this type of competition, and ultimately you benefit from it. Granted, the Huskies were on the opposite side of that argument last year with the unfortunate, the results that they had. But I am pleased with the response from St. Cloud to go in and to win a 1-0 grinder type game, because against good teams, you kind of have to win that way sometimes. And really for UMD, going back to their title runs there, that's kind of how they won, right? It was, you're not going to blow out your opponents, but you have to be comfortable with being uncomfortable, right, Max?
Right. Yeah. I mean, those title runs that you're talking about there, you're seeing UMD win those games as 2-1, 3-2. It would rarely get above that. But once they had that lead, they were a puck possession team where it was just suffocate them and only allow a couple of chances one way or the other and keep them to the outside and don't give them high scoring opportunities. And it worked. So obviously it's been a proven method that Denver's utilized pretty well. They started last year trying to outscore people, and that defense turned out to be one of the best in the nation at the end of the year last year. So they transitioned and kind of grew a little bit as well. So I think in college, defense and size is still one of the most effective ways to win games. And in the NCHC, I think they do it better than most other conferences. I know I sound like a homer for the conference, if that's even a thing, but the results speak for themselves.
6 national championships out of 8. I mean, It
Yeah.
really is hard to argue that. It really is. So,
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And just talking about some of the exhibition wins, and we've got opposite kind of schedules there. And I've got a little bit of I don't know if I loved how UMD did that, if I'm just being honest. And I don't know if they had any say in how that went, just in terms of playing a regular season game first and then an exhibition game. Obviously, the traditional approach to that would be to do it in reverse order,
mhm.
just so that you can kind of get your lines together, see how people gel, and make adjustments in that tinkering game. But on the flip side of that, playing an exhibition game second did allow UMD to rest some of the players that were playing in that first game, to get some looks at some players who otherwise might not have got the opportunity. Get every one of their skaters touch the ice this weekend. So it was nice. My biggest beef with it personally, and I think it would have had to happen either way, was that Adam Guyon had to sit one game from a ineligibility issue, because I think he played one professional game like 3 years ago overseas, and it's just a archaic precedent that had been set where he wasn't allowed to play in the first regular season game for UMD, and I think that's going away probably with the vote in November here.
Mhm.
But I just it irks me a little bit that they're just relying on that, because the precedent had been set in the past, and there's really no arguing with people ahead of that, and they didn't know that until the week of. But all that aside, anyway, like I said, having that second exhibition game did allow them to maybe get a little bit more confidence back. When you're talking about that one freshman line scored, all of the points and goals and everything for UMD in the opener. In that second game, you got to see Dominic James put two away. You got to see some of the long term guys get out there and put some numbers up. Aaron Pionk getting some play from the point, and dominate like they should. They did give up the first goal and were playing down, which I hate seeing, because it's becoming a trend again this year. But I did feel like they got into a groove and were able to find a way to play outside of that as well. But yeah, I think that's good vibes going out of that weekend because of that secondary exhibition game as a tune-up.
And, maybe like you said, not the traditional way, but just for the way the cards were laid, right? Maybe it ends up
Right.
being the best thing for UMD, who have quite the road trip coming up here in the
Yeah.
second weekend. As we look ahead to weekend number 2 between our two squads, you're heading to UMass Lowell. That's a
Correct.
bust ride. At least
Yeah.
I hope it's flying, but who knows? Maybe it's a bus. I don't know.
I'm
But
guessing it's a
that's
bus.
yeah, it's not a short trip, right? It's not going
No.
to St. Cloud, it's not going to Mankato. That's to the East Coast. So that'll be a good test of, sort of your mentality, if anything, Max, especially for the young kids, right? That, I think you and I are old enough, not that we're dating ourselves, but
Right.
when the WCHA was, still around, the road trips for either our squads to go to the Alaska schools, and how arduous that was to adjust. And it's not the same, but it's still the similar challenge, right? Of, you're still getting, with the travel and then trying to adjust, and you're playing 2 games of hockey. And UMass Lowell, I think they were in the top 25 last year, top 30. They were middle of the pack. They weren't maybe the scary team, but they weren't, shall we say, bottom half team per se, if I remember correctly. So I don't believe they're ranked currently coming
Right.
into this weekend, but still an opponent that UMD is going to have to take seriously. And to your point, trying to buck a trend, more maybe so start a trend, you got to get at least one win out there. You'd love to, but you
Right.
can't go 0-4 on this weekend to not start the season off with, the not good vibes, right?
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. UMass Lowell was similar to UMD in that they had, maybe not championship aspirations at the beginning of the year, but they had higher expectations than they finished the season with. I don't
Mhm.
know that they even got to double digit wins. So they were certainly lower than average in Hockey East, and probably lower than they had been in a couple of previous seasons. Their coaching has always been stellar. It's just a lack of talent when you're competing with some of those other schools in the area, and the transfer portal and everything else. And speaking of that, there's one other thing I wanted to mention when we were talking about impacts of college hockey and the Canadians coming in and the changes and everything else happening. This is the last year for fifth-year players from
Yep.
the COVID eligibility as well. So that's had an impact. I know UMD doesn't have a ton of them on the team this year. I need to look at the Lowell roster again. I know they've only got 8 freshmen, but based on everything that I've seen as far as the stats go, they've still got a good chunk of size and they're more prominent players on that defensive, that back end there. So they don't give a lot of stuff up. It's similar to how Bemidji might be a more defensive-minded team traditionally. So they're going to have to learn to capitalize on their opportunities. UMD wasn't able to capitalize on opportunities that they had in overtime or in regulation last weekend, and those pucks eventually they're going to go in. I have no doubt about it, especially with some of the people that had the chances that either just caught a ridge on the ice or wasn't able to get the puck on their stick, or goalie made an incredible save. Yeah, I got to goalie making an incredible save. So all credit to Bemidji State's goalie. He ended up being the CCHA goalie of the week.
Is that Matthias Scholl, right?
No, that was Robbins came in because Scholl went out with leg cramp. Yeah. So he only ended up playing, I think, just about 15 minutes, and ended up that was all enough to make CCHA Player of the Week. UMD outshot Bemidji 14-4 in that third period. So he was under fire coming in cold and stood tall and made plenty of saves. So all credit to him. Moving back to UMass Lowell, if we want to keep it on the goalie tandem or the goalie topic there, they started the season last year with one expected goalie that was going to be there all year. He ended up losing it to, I think it's Henry Welsh is their goalie, who's planning on starting this year. Not a ton of competition to be pushing him. There's a transfer from Northern Michigan playing there, and a D3 goalie made the jump up as well. So there is, some competition. But it's not like you've got a NHL draft pick sitting in net. The UMD is going to have to test them, and if they do what they did last weekend, I think it will produce a different result for them, because I don't know if you know this or not, UMD 40 shots in their game against Bemidji. That is the most through one game in the nation. Obviously, the people that have played 2 games are going to have more shots than UMD, but for the people or for the teams and programs that only played 1 game, they're all trailing UMD in shots, and the other stat, as far as good that UMD is leading in, face-off percentage. Talk about a turnaround from last year. Dominic James coming in and winning 17 of his 22 face-offs. The team as a whole is over 64%. Obviously, incredibly small sample size against one opponent, but a drastic difference from what they had last year. And you see how Dominic James might not have changed the entire trajectory of a season for UMD over the last season, but there's certainly a couple of power plays or a couple of games where you might have a 1-goal swing, and there was enough close games where that might have mattered for a handful of games. So I think if they can keep even close to those numbers against a team like UMass Lowell, they'll come away with at least 1 win, and fingers crossed they're able to make it 2. But it's not going to be easy. Like I said, Lowell is a well-coached program, and Sandelin and the rest of the coaching staff has a lot of respect for those guys as well. And they've ran into them before, and they've played really tight games, and I expect it to be good at the very least.
It's going to be a good matchup for St. Cloud as well. They get the home and home with Bemidji, which is traditionally, speaking of bucking the trend, has been essentially by New Year's or just after the holiday break. They're getting them early this year. And Max, we've seen a sort of pseudo transition with Bemidji State. Now, granted, they still have tendencies, to be opportunistic, but they're not the same trap type team that we're used to seeing under, Sarah Torrey for the number of years. And, that's good. I think I argued a couple of years ago on this podcast that at some point Bemidji needed to change the way it plays the game. Right. And not to say that, it's like the trendy thing to do, but just to be competitive, right? You needed to be more on your toes. You just can't sit back anymore. Partly why, as all Wild fans would say, Jacques Lemaire eventually his tenure ran out because the system just wasn't relevant anymore. And I think their program is better for it. In St. Cloud, with playing in St. Cloud and then again making the travel up to Bemidji the night after. Again, there's still a little bit of a challenge there. It's not too bad, but they're going to face a pretty stingy Bemidji State team, as you saw. Again, they took it 4-3. So I'm curious to see how St. Cloud adjusts. and more so picks up after their win against St. Thomas. Again, a 1-0 nail biter, but for those who didn't pay attention to that game, St. Cloud heavily out shooting. Speaking of shots on goal, I think it was 14-5 in the first period. And then it was the last two periods, it was all St. Thomas. So you cannot have that same repeat performance against any team. You'll end up being on the losing end of that argument more often than not. So I'm just hoping for St. Cloud to be more consistent. Again, this is early season, probably jitters. At least that's what we're hoping for. But again, another good, strong test early before some other big names come through for both of our squads in non-conference. So, Max, we typically do this, so we're going to continue the trend is prediction time. Do you think, and I know you're not going to homer this prediction, or maybe you will, who knows? But what's your expectations for the Bulldogs and how they will do in Massachusetts, and how will they come back? Will it be 2-0? Will it be 1-1? Or will they come back 0-2?
I think they've got enough urgency in the team. It's hard to say that. There were so many positives, and it's so early in the season that, they don't feel like they let anybody down, but they want to win. This is a team that's really passionate, and they've played together for a very long time. I joke that half the team is from Hermantown. That's obviously a bit of an exaggeration, but when you're approaching double digits and not facetiously, you can start to say those things. And, you've got some guys like Shagabe and all of these other guys from Minnesota who have played on these elite teams with one another. Like they've got some really good chemistry. And this will be their first road trip of the year, and their only one until I think mid-December again as well. So getting some time on the road with guys that you're trying to get to know is going to build some of that chemistry. And I think some wins out there will go a long way to do it. So if they win on Friday, I think they're going to win both of them. They're going to carry that momentum in and take both games. If they lose on Friday, it becomes nerve-wracking where you feel like you're going to be trying to push things. I still think they have a chance to win on Saturday, if that's the case. But putting my name on the line here, reputation, staking a claim, however many euphemisms and sayings I have to go through, I'm going with UMD comes away 2-0 and gets back into a I don't want to say they're going to be ranked because it's so dependent, especially at this point, on how the rest of the country does. But at the very least, they'll be receiving votes and ranked in one of the polls at the end of the week.
I don't disagree with that. I think UMass Lowell, although they're a good hockey team, no disrespect to them, but I do think UMD is better this year. I am curious how, again, being such a young team with the travel, it seems like such a mundane point, right? From the outside, but it is still something that you, as a freshman, you kind of have to figure out, right? This isn't going from Eden Prairie to Hastings and back, right? It's halfway across the country. So I am curious to see how the team, who is very young, handles that. For my Huskies, I am going to go the same. I'm going to go bold. I'm going to think they're going to go 2-0. A couple of things that I like about this squad, particularly. Granted, it's only been a couple of games. One, Colin Ralph, who's on the back and second round pick of the St. Louis Blues, played with a little bit of hesitation, I think, in his first game, but the decision making was there. He's big. He's 6'4" as a true freshman, like 225 pounds out of Shattuck. He's a beast. And you talk about the size needed in this conference, like he brings that. Also, Gavin Thorson, he didn't find, shall we say, maybe the score sheet a ton, but he was a pest. And against the Gophers, I can't even tell you how many times in front of the Gopher net he basically initiated a couple scrums. He's a guy that's really going to cause fits around the opposing netminder, and I really love to see that. Because he's got the skill to go with it. Bernovic too, would love to see him just start ripping the puck again. Freshman, your pass first mentality. I get it, right? That's sort of the initiation that happens when you get into college hockey. But when he did shoot the puck, my goodness, does that thing have like a vapor trail behind it? So I have positive vibes for this squad. I do think, again, with Isaac Posh in net, with him a full 60, it's his net to lose. To me, I think there's just too much balance for St. Cloud against Bemidji State. I think they come out of this 2-0. Am I wrong, Max? Or am I just too big, too being a homer? Now I'm the radio guy. Now I can say that here. Am I being too much of a homer, or what do you think?
No, all the radio guys I know listen to, shout out Brusiski, are homers, and they're unapologetically so. So I think you're just filling into that or falling into that role gracefully, and I encourage it. I would say that is something you should be doing. I was just laughing to myself here, trying to think of which broadcast team had the NHL the trailer on the puck, whether it was Fox or CBS or
That was the Fox. That was the
was it
Fox
Fox?
one. The
Yeah.
tracker or whatever.
God,
The red
it
thing.
was so
Fox. Yeah.
so stupid, but I loved it so much. It was much better when you're playing video games and you had it turned on. It was
Mhm.
That's where it should live. It should not be in a TV broadcast. But I want NHL 25 or whatever to bring that back, so that I can see it again. And maybe there is a setting I just need to turn on, but the nostalgia of that one brings me back, and I love it.
Can you imagine, like, because the 90s graphics era didn't help the cause, right?
No, it
You know,
did
just
not.
the early adoption. I do commend it, like the thought of let's
Oh
try
yeah.
this, right?
Yep.
And again, the whole idea was, can we attract new fans? Because that was sort of the big thing with essentially going back to the television equipment, right? The cameras just weren't good at the contrast, the white and
Right.
the black. So the complaint was, if I'm new to hockey, where the heck is the puck? I can't follow this game, right? This
Yep.
was their attempt to sort of answer that. And granted, probably 20 years before there really was an ample solution. And really, the answer was we just needed better cameras, better lighting. I think the game on TV right now looks spectacular. Besides
Incredible.
the dynamic board ads that are out there,
Oh,
we could go into an hour-long segment about that
yeah.
next. We'll say that for another day. But I do agree with you. They had like a retro setting for the puck. That would be pretty fun. That would be
Yeah.
kind of fun. Now that I'm thinking about this a little bit more, could you imagine? It's not going to be player attributes you could change. Could you imagine if a sports gaming franchise, you
Mhm.
could change like the broadcast pack, like back in the day, like
Yeah.
ESPN or Fox or NHL and NBC? That would be kind of fun and a different twist on something that
Yeah.
you just wouldn't expect. I mean, I don't know. I mean,
I
what do you
I
think?
think I think in college football, the newest iteration, I know you can change your stadium atmosphere and all the other stuff to, national championship game and all the other options. I don't know if you can change broadcast team or not, or if they got the rights to all the voices or anything incorporated. I
That'd
feel
be
like I've seen that gameplay online, but it would be great. And if there were something like a Manning cast for hockey right now, where you've got some former players sitting in there, I think it might be one of the most popular shows on television. I don't know that you would be able to air it on anything other than a cable stream where you can put a TVMA,
too,
because
basically.
yeah, the amount of adult language that would be flying around would probably be too much for anybody to try and blur out or beep or what, censor is the correct term there. But
You know what,
it
Max?
would be fun.
That's a great idea, because I think I've mentioned this before, but if you're in the Tampa arena in Amway, you can, if you're inside the arena, you can purchase, I think it's like $10 a game. Essentially, if you go to like their app, you can tap into the mics, the ice mics, and essentially listen to the uncensored chirping. Um, I think we have $1 million idea here, I think, is
That's
but
incredible.
to incorporate it, like you said, with the video, right? To
Yep.
have like you said, like whatever Manning cast, and you wouldn't necessarily need, oh geez, here it is. It's the Manning cast, but use it for, oh geez, why can't I think of the podcast with Ray Whitney and
Oh, Ryan Whitney. Oh, Spitting Chicklets.
Spit and Chicklets, have them
Yeah,
do it,
yeah, yeah,
but then just filter in an uncut, the rink mics, and then have
yeah,
them comment on that. Dude,
yeah,
that would be the NHL can make so much money, but that's
yeah. It's
that's
just
just
what Biz needs. One more thing for him to
right.
do in between all of his other stuff. Yeah,
That would be nuts. And of course, because it's too much fun, there's no way the league is going to do it. But
right.
with that being said, back towards home, fun to be had as, again, college hockey season is underway. St. Cloud, again, 2 games against Bemidji State at home on Friday, in Bemidji Saturday. Max Veech and his Bulldogs on the road to UMass Swallow for a 2-game set. So, again, picking up here pretty quick. Hopefully, Both of our teams come out 2-0 according to our predictions. But with that being said, we'll leave it there. Max, we'll come back next week. We'll break it all down and preview the next slate of games. So for Max Veech, I'm Nick Maxson. This is NCHC on MNCAA.